people make investments in their homes thinking that they're going to live there for longer than they are. And these upgrades are made for their enjoyment. And they forget that there is a market out there that eventually you're going to sell your home.
Yes.
And
Powerful.
that was yesterday was you can't sell, the seller, he paid cash for his townhouse. And he said, hey, the reason that I would love you to sell my home, but I know that for the market price, and we went through that, I'm basically going to lose $5,000. And I said, well, that's something that you have to consider. But his friend, the realtor who he contacted to buy the unit, must not have run comps and did not advise him to get an appraisal because he was a cash buyer. And he actually paid $20,000 over the price at the time that he bought that unit in 2015. So the good news was I'd already known that, but we were able to have that conversation. And I walked away with a relationship of him saying, hey, listen, I'm going to be coming into some cash, some liquid cash, and I'd like to, continue to invest in real estate. I would love to work with you. So I'm really grateful for that and for the opportunity to have had the conversation, build the relationship, and then continue to build it. But I learned a lot of lessons during that conversation yesterday.
Love it. Great job. Really great job.
Thank you.
By the way, Sarah, while I'm thinking about it, I noticed that Matt jumped on here just a few minutes ago, and Matt is looking for our Take Us Out script that we share every day at the end of the call. I know you've got that in writing. If you could put that on the Survive to Thrive Facebook page, that would be awesome, because I know there's a few people who are looking for that.
I will do that.
You're amazing. Thank you.
You are welcome. My pleasure. Thank you.
Of course. There you go, Matt. Ask and you shall receive. Another great book to read, guys, is The Aladdin Factor.
Great book.
Really a great book. One of the reasons we don't get what we want is because we don't ask for it. It could be just that simple.
And that's a great point.
Right?
Yeah, that's a great point. And to touch on that, I manage a property in Belle Glade, which is a nightmare because Belle Glade's an hour and a half from us, right? And speaking of, if you don't ask, you don't get, I basically asked my owner yesterday if he would allow me to list this building because now is just not the time to own rental property in Belle Glade. And he said yes. So guess what's going on the market today?
There you go, Lance. You're a rock star.
How many units?
4 units.
Oh, okay.
4 units. It's a 4-unit building. It's got 4 separate water meters. And we're going to let it go for $250.
What?
I'm perfectly happy with that. So
what's it rent? I'll call you.
Yeah, call me. Let's not waste John's time. Yeah, call me. It's good. But speaking of Sarah's, it was funny, Sarah talking about the other realtor was a friend of her new customer. I wonder if he's still calling him a friend after paying $20,000 more for that property. I'll mute and listen to the response.
Oh, I don't know if we need a response. I think we know the answer to that question.
Let me put it to you this way. When I called him yesterday to confirm our appointment at 4, he spent 6 minutes ranting about his ex-friend because he realized, and then we still met at 6 p.m. So yeah, it's an ex-friend.
There's your answer. Sarah, I have a couple questions for you. The property that you're referencing, is it an investment property or does he live in it?
He lives in it.
Okay. And he's lived in it since 2015.
Yes.
Yeah. And his decision after you helping him to discover what true market value is today his decision is to hang on the property and not sell it, correct?
His decision is to hang on the property and not sell it. However, I believe that I could still sell it and make him money because it's a 2-bedroom with a loft, and which can be used as a home office, which has value today. So what we agreed on was that I would keep my eye on the market for him. And when I see the market shifting to where just before he could get his price, we'll be the first ones on the market.
Cool. Can I ask you a couple of questions that
Sure.
might help you get the listing?
Yes,
Would you be the seller and just let me role play with you?
of course.
So Sarah, you mentioned that you're going to lose $5,000 if you sell your home today, correct?
Yes,
Tell me why you feel that way.
because I have looked at the numbers based on what I would have to pay for the real estate commission, my closing costs. I'm going to lose $5,000.
Okay. Are you selling the property for less money than what you purchased it for in 2015 if you were to sell it today?
No, I'm selling it for more money than I purchased it in 2015, but I wouldn't recoup the money, the upgrades that I made.
Okay. And yet you've lived in the property for 5 years now, right?
Yes,
And 5 years is 60 months.
yes.
If you were to rent the property out, how much would it rent for? Just out of curiosity.
It would probably rent for $1,800 a month.
So let's round that up to 2,000, right?
Yes,
And yet you haven't paid rent on it the last 60 months, have you?
no,
Right? And if I'm doing the math right in my head, 60 months times $2,000 is $120,000.
yes,
Right. So you've lived in that property for the last 5 years without paying $120,000 in rent.
hmm
And you have to
Yes.
live somewhere, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So are you really losing $5,000 if you were to sell it today? Isn't that $120,000 that you didn't pay on rent? Isn't that a gain?
Well, I paid cash for this property. So when I look at my overall investment, because I didn't pay a mortgage, I'm not calculating that into it. So, that's the difference, I think, when you pay cash versus when you're paying otherwise. If you've got payments, you're making those monthly mortgage payments, which would total up, but I paid it all up front in cash. And so I want to make sure that I don't want to feel that I'm bringing any money to the closing table.
Cool. So I'm just going to let that sit. It's a bomb. I've dropped it and I'm going to walk away. And my hope is Sarah's the seller in this situation. And my hope is that at some point the light bulb goes off for Sarah and she goes, you know what? That makes sense.
Yeah.
I didn't pay $120,000 in rent. I lived in this house the last 5 years rent free. I actually made $120,000 on the property because I lived in it without paying rent.
Right.
Yep. And we had that conversation because I bought him to the point where I said, well, if you had rented this or if you were paying rent, because you have to live somewhere, and everywhere you're going to rent a roof or own a roof. And we went through that scenario of what he would have spent had he been paying rent somewhere else. And then I just left it there.
Cool. One last point I'm going to make, and then we're going to move on. The property that we live in, is it an investment or is it shelter?
Shelter.
Shelter. It's not an investment. How do most sellers look at it?
Is an investment.
As an investment.
That's
correct.
Great thoughts for today.
Okay, guys, I spent time this morning, like I always do, preparing for today's call, and I've got that ready to go. And because of where we are right now, as I'm walking this morning, I'm thinking about a story that I read in here that I really think applies to what's going on right now. And I'm prepared to share that as well. So I'm going to leave it up to you. What do you want to talk about? This is your
Let's go
call.
with the story. We need the story.
Let's do the story. We need the story. Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Tell us the story.
We want a storybook.
Okay. If you have a copy of Just Jones, it's in the prologue.
Okay.
Now, the land between two rivers at the time of emergence. The time of emergence is creation. And this person's name, I can't pronounce it. It's Heskaetvmese.
Oh,
It's an Indian name, a Native American Indian name. Heska Temese. Let's just go with Heska Temese
thank
because that's as close as I can come. Created sky and dirt and water. Soon he made the eagle to guard the sky, corn to spring from the dirt, and fish to keep the bugs out of the water. Seeing that it was all good, Heska, it's a good thing that I came up with a way to pronounce this because it's in here many times. Heske Temese then made his children. Now, I'm only reading the highlighted portions to you. This is like 4 pages long. So if it feels like we're jumping around, we are. When the fog finally began to blow away, the people who were first able to see called themselves the Wind Clan. As the fog cleared from all the land, clans took their names from the first things they saw, and so became the bear, deer, turkey, alligator, raccoon, and bird clans. So we've got people in different clans who are separated in different parts of the world. They're divided. That's important. I hope you got that. All of Heske Temese's children, of all of his children, only the Wind clan chose to stay where he had made them in the land between two rivers. On a high bluff overlooking the ancient lake, Heske Temese created what all would call the place of coverings. He placed 12 oak trees in a wide circle. When he had arranged them perfectly, that's important, pay attention. Heske Temese created what all would call the place of coverings. He placed 12 oak trees in a wide circle. When he had arranged them perfectly, he created the greatest tree of them all and placed it in the center. This guys, I just have to tell you, this is clear what we're talking about. And this is just my perspective, my immediate perspective on this. The United States is the tree in the center. This created a covering to provide shelter and prevent his children from climbing to his home before it was time for their spirits to join him there. Okay, let me read the part before that because it's not going to make sense otherwise. With his fingers, Heske Temese tangled the branches of the mighty oak trees he had placed in a circle and bound them to the branches of his special tree. This created a covering to provide shelter and prevent his children from climbing to his home before it was time for their spirits to join him there. And when the animals feasted there, all did so peacefully. And what Heske Temese expected of them. Let me say it again. And when all the animals feasted there, all did so peacefully and with consideration for each other, because they knew this was what Heske Temese expected of them. The master of breath had made it known that all clans were welcome there at any time. But there was a specific law that was to be observed without exception. When under the coverings of Heskay Demese, all present were to be kind-hearted and patient. Each clan was to seek deep understanding of the others and were to use words of joy and gratefulness and praise. Everyone felt the master's presence, and so everyone carefully considered each word before speaking aloud.
Mm.
This was how things were done in the days when the earth was young and people were kind one to another.
Oh, wow.
But there came a time when Setve, the evil one that Heskay Demese cast into the swamp and allowed to rule under its foul waters, began to cause trouble. Where harmony had once existed between brothers, Setve created discord. Where families had only known trust, the evil one stirred suspicion. And though generosity had been their way, Setve introduced the clans to jealousy. Guys, this story is 100 years old. Wasn't written yesterday. One day during the season of discontent, a loud burst of sound was heard across the land. As the clans gathered at the coverings, they looked to the biggest oak. Who are they looking at? The tree in the center, and saw that it was that its body had spirit. The crack was only the size of a warrior's finger. The great tree in the center had been divided. That was the sound that they had heard. And it slowly widened as everyone watched in alarm. Accusations began to fly. Arguments intensified, but before blood was taken, the voice of Heskay Demese, as if carried by thunder, sounded within them all. Stop this fighting. I did not create your hearts for trouble. There was a cry then from many of the people, for all knew Heskay Demese's chosen tree was being rent in two because of his displeasure with them. Of the broadening crack, the warrior said, though the grain of the tree springs from the same root, its wood has now decided to disagree. By going in different directions, neither side is as strong as they once were together. Not only have the two sides chosen a course that will make them ever weaker, but they have now opened themselves to a future in which they will become weaker still. Without protection, this crack is an entryway for crawling things to journey into the tree's heart. If that pathway is not blocked, the heart will be captured. The enemy will then be free to consume it from within, and the tree will die. Can anything be done? A warrior asked. Is there anything we can do? Another woman offered. For a moment, he said nothing, and then tears began to flow from the people, for they were very sorry for what they had caused, and they were ashamed. Finally, the warrior spoke. By the way, who's the warrior? I'm going to tell you in a moment, but who do you think it is? Who do you think it is? Well, no, the warrior is cutting. He specifically refers to the devil as the individual who is thrown into the swamp. The warrior is coming to the rescue.
Okay, I misunderstood. I need to read it.
No, you're good. Finally, the warrior spoke. I have come to bind you together, to make all things new.
Jesus.
With those words, he walked from the center tree and did not stop until he had taken as many strides as there are fingers on the hands of 25 warriors. Reaching one of the 12 trees, he turned, planted his feet, drew his bow, and let the arrow fly. The white arrowhead buried itself firmly in the crack of the chosen tree. The arrow stone, he said, has gone into the deepest part of the tree's womb. There, each side of the stone will begin binding together the two sides that should have never been apart. This tree is now a symbol of peace. It will continue to grow, but only you will decide whether or not the healing wisdom begun this day will continue to bind your own wounds or foolishness. The old people say that when Sebes, that's the warrior, spoke his final words, he placed the bow over his shoulders and began to climb up the very tree he had just saved. He climbed until they could no longer see or hear him, and all present knew he had returned to his father. From that day forward, all the great chiefs would travel to the coverings on Solace, the day the sun stands still. There they would light a council fire and speak in honor of the warrior who brought peace to their people. The gatherings was always ended with a ceremony binding the wood. As the blaze turned to embers, a single arrow stone, the most beautiful and valuable of all they carried among them, was selected. Together, the great chiefs would press the symbol of their commitment to Heskavese, and each other into the ancient wound of the massive tree they called the Peacemaker Oak. Talk to me.
John, I think the story is.
All right, let's raise our hands. I know there's going to be a lot on this. I heard Shirley's voice. Go, Shirley. Maybe I didn't. Whoever's first, just go. And if you can hit that little digital hand, that would be cool.
I'll try.
John, it was Clarissa. I was saying that it kind of parallels with the story of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of liken the warrior to Jesus. Symbolic numbers. 12 trees, 12 apostles. And Jesus came to save the world, to give his people a peace that the world couldn't give.
Good job. Good job. Who's next?
Well, John, the 12 could also be the 12 tribes of Israel.
Right.
Yeah. Good job. I love that.
And it's very interesting how, the tree, like you said, if the things can crawl into the heart, that's going to kill it. And, binding the wound is very powerful. And I think what you're sharing with us today is really appropriate in light of things that have happened, and that we need to heal our wounds and come together and appreciate each other, cherish our differences, come from curiosity, like Gary said,
Yep.
and speak with kindness so that we can move forward.
Good job, Valerie. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, by the way, I acknowledge that not everybody is going to have the same
Right.
beliefs, and I'm totally okay with that. Matter of fact, I acknowledge that there might be a few people who were on the call that jumped off the call because they didn't like the message, correct? I'm okay with that. This is what I believe. This is what I hold to be true, and not going to apologize for that.
And I appreciate that you are firm in what you believe, and that you are not ashamed of what you believe, and you're willing to share it and say it and stand behind and stand with that decision. I think that that's really great, because I know a lot of times I've heard coaches say, do not mention anything about your religious or spiritual or faith beliefs, because it doesn't, I've heard that said. So I really appreciate that that from you, that we don't have to divide ourselves from that perspective. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I'm not going to deny my faith, and I'm not asking you to deny your faith. Here's a question for you. Is our country in crisis right now?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Right. Are we a divided country?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately.
Yes. Very
But-
very critical time. I mean, literally on the brink of civil war.
But I think, John, in retrospect, I think yesterday actually brought the country more together.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
If I may share, John, I want to thank you for sharing that story, because it's powerful. As a Christian, I call myself a Christian, and yesterday was January 6th, which was the Epiphany Day for us,
Mhm.
where we celebrate God's incarnate in Jesus Christ. And what is an epiphany is a divine revelation, and that's my belief. And yesterday we saw what happened. There was division before what happened. And after it happened, when they continued with the process that was interrupted, the division became lessened. So those who were about to oppose to a decision chose not to. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them. So to me, it's as if like we had an epiphany.
Mhm.
And when bad comes, there is always good that follows, because before he climbed the tree, the warrior will leave us a message.
Yeah. Listen to this, and I'm going to close. This is Colossians 1:16. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together.
Yep. John, thank you for being non-apologetic. And going back to the story, this is really, because I've read this, and I'm so happy you brought it out today, because it has a different meaning. I see it differently.
Mm.
And I want to go back to where he took the arrow stone.
Mm,
And as I think about it, what represents the arrow stone, because he put the arrow stone
mhm,
into the heart of the tree. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking, what did God put into the center of, or Jesus come to put into the center of each one of us? His Holy Spirit.
mm,
That Holy Spirit lying within that tree, that peacemaker oath.
mm.
And that's representative of what we should all be. We all need to be a peacemaker oak. Sometimes when we think of trees being totally stationary and planted, but we're all trees. As I walk this earth, I'm a tree. And these things should be planted within me. And on a day like yesterday, where that was just nothing but a picture of nothing but domestic terrorism, thank you for bringing this out.
You're welcome. So I fibbed. I'm not going to close with that. I'm going to close with this. We either create our culture. If you're on my Facebook page, you saw this because I've posted this a couple times in relation to what's going on. We either create our culture or we give into the culture that already exists. When you walk into a room that is dark, you flip the light switch on and immediately the room is no longer dark. Light always trumps darkness.
Yes.
It always have, it always will. By the way, darkness hides when light enters the room. It always will. It always has. Therefore, if you see that your world is darkening, if you believe that the culture of your nation is growing dimmer by the year, don't blame it on the dark. Darkness is only doing what darkness does. If darkness is winning the battles, it is because light is not doing its job. By the way, we will not change the world by complaining about the darkness. Change happens when we become the light.
Strong words, John, strong words.
Thank you, Alex. Guys, with your permission, we're not going to close our normal way today. It just doesn't fit.
Yeah.
So you're in my thoughts. You're in my prayers. Be the light. Be the light. Be the light. Be the light.
Thank you.
Alex, go ahead.
I'll make two quick announcements.
Yes.
Everybody's in the Fort Lauderdale office. We're doing a new office preview today between 9:30 and 10:30. And the new office is over on Commercial Boulevard at 2490 East Commercial Boulevard, which is Denny's on Commercial and Federal Highway. And number two is that I hope you don't mind, Melissa, but Melissa's going on a FSBO appointment today. She's going to rock it, right?
Yeah, Melissa.
Yes.
She is going to rock
Thank you,
it.
John,
She's
for allowing
got
me
it.
to say that.
She is going to rock it. She is going to rock it. All right, everybody, make
She
it.
is. Look at
make
her.
it-
Look at that smile.
Of course.
Make it a great day, everybody.
You want it.
Thank
Make
you.
it a great day. Yes.
Okay.